Liverpool started off in a 4-2-2-2, and Manchester City started off in a 4-1-4-1. So we have Ederson in goal, Guardiola, Nathan Ake, Husanov, Rico Lewis, Nico Gonzalez, Doku, Marmoush, Kevin De Bruyne, Savio, and Foden. For Liverpool, we have Alisson, Trent Alexander, Konate, Van Dijk, Robertson, Gravenberch, McAllister, Mo Salah, Luis Diaz, Szoboszlai, and Curtis Jones. What Pep Guardiola did was that when Liverpool were in their 4-2-4, Guardiola moved here, Doku a bit inside, and we have this back three of Nathan Ake, Husanov, and Rico Lewis. And so what happened was that Phil Foden, so the first thing he did was he pushed Rico Lewis up into the midfield, forming a double pivot with Nico Gonzalez, these two over here. And so now the idea basically was it was a build up with a back two, and so the idea was to create the central overload, and for that he dropped Phil Foden as a false nine, and that dragged Van Dijk over here. Because of this, it was causing Liverpool problems in the midfield, and by dragging Van Dijk over here, the idea was to target this space over here. But the problem was, and so Marmoush was the guy who was tasked to make the runs. But the problem over here was that because Haaland wasn't playing and he's the guy, who's pinning these guys over here, and then, Marmoush is that extra man making these runs. That wasn't really happening. And so when Foden brought Van Dijk, he dragged Van Dijk out. There was a space over here, but it wasn't being targeted. So the ball was basically being played to the flanks over here with Doku or Savinho. And the other thing he did was that he dropped, while Rico Lewis moved into the midfield, Kevin De Bruyne became the right back. Pep Guardiola's idea was basically to drag Van Dijk out, and so Marmoush was supposed to make these runs. And because of that, that is the reason he dropped Kevin De Bruyne as a right back. And once De Bruyne did that, where he moved out wide over here, McAllister couldn't overcommit to him, because when Marmoush would make the runs, McAllister was the guy who was supposed to track him as well, because Van Dijk was out of position. And so that is why initially, during the start of the game, there were a lot of runs over here, and Man City were basically outnumbering Liverpool. And that is why McAllister was stuck in no man's land. Another thing that happened was that sometimes Phil Foden would drag Konate out of position, and Doku would get the ball, and because he's really good 1v1, he would beat Trent Alexander easily, make the move here, and then Savinho would try to get at the end of those crosses. And so what happened was that City came very close to scoring, but they were unlucky. It didn't happen. When Van Dijk was out of position, another thing that Pep had in mind was that Rico Lewis was also supposed to make these runs. So once Foden got the ball or connected with Nico, he was the guy also making the runs, and so Van Dijk, he had to crack back really fast. And because of that, in the first 15 minutes, City were totally sort of dominating Liverpool, and Liverpool were having a hard time with ball control and all that. And because if they do not have ball control, getting to Mohamed Salah becomes more difficult, and that is why they had to then rely on transitions, which did work out for them in the end. So Guardiola's plan basically was it was good, it was top notch, but as far as not having Haaland or some extra guys in the threat, because Savinho and Doku were basically wide wingers who are dribblers, and so having that overload or that threat, goal scoring threat, the guys who can finish it off in the center of the box, that was a bit difficult. And so that's why although Man City had a slightly higher XG than Liverpool, at the end of the day Liverpool were the winners. Because of Foden's false nine movement the and the numerical advantage that Man City had and the chances they were creating, what Slot did was then he moved to a 4-3-3, which was sort of a lopsided 4-3-3. That was because when De Bruyne was moving here, he was moving here back and forth as a right back and a midfielder. So Man City had a front five basically, and so McAllister was basically then charged with taking on Foden. So as Foden dropped deep, instead of Van Dijk or Konate or Van Dijk dropping in, McAllister was told to take him on and Luis Diaz. So instead of having that 4-2-4, Luis Diaz was then marking Kevin De Bruyne. And so Curtis Jones and Szoboszlai were the guys marking the midfielders, and Salah's the guy over here. So that if Liverpool win the ball back over here in this area, they can quickly connect to Salah, and then maybe Trent can make that run, or Szoboszlai or Curtis Jones can make these forward movements, as well as Luis Diaz over here, or Robertson from the side. So Liverpool's first goal came from a set piece, and it was something that they worked out in training. It normally doesn't work, but it worked wonders because it was a one touch, and then at the end of the day it came to Salah, and again another brilliant shot straight in the goal. Liverpool's second goal, it's a perfect example of how they outplayed Man City's press, and they were doing that throughout the game. And so this is a perfect example of how they actually did that, and it did end up in a goal, a brilliant one for Szoboszlai, and that is how Liverpool ended up winning the game.